means when people are under some form of stress, when they're in the middle of a task, for example, live tweeting. When they're in the middle of a task, for example, checking their email. When they're in the middle of a task, for example, trying to remember the 6 things they need to do before the next class, they're not really paying attention. They're only focused on the thing that they're focusing on. It is called cognitive tunneling. And people under stress engage in cognitive tunneling, where they look only at the thing that is necessary to complete the task or is the source of their anxiety or concern or anger or fear, and they miss everything else. I do a lot of work with automobile insurance companies, and they are now on a huge campaign to stop what they call distracted driving. Because we don't multitask.
Right.
We serially task in microbursts. And when we're serially tasking in microbursts, we don't see the gorilla. And we don't see the bicycle riding in front of the car. We don't see the red light or the stop sign. And so automobile insurance companies are working really hard to first educate people and second to encourage laws that prohibit texting while driving or shaving while driving or reading newspapers while driving. But doing something while driving causes more fatal accidents than drinking while driving.
Stroking your jaw.
And that's because we don't multitask, we serially task. One of the challenges when you're dealing with audiences is unless you direct them to see something, they're unlikely to notice what it is you want them to notice.
I wonder, you said when I saw the gorilla, I said, okay, the gorilla is the distraction, let's not look at the gorilla. Because usually I know that is, you know, in my life I try to be careful not to get distracted, and I know that it's an easy form of manipulation to put a gorilla that doesn't belong there, so you get all wrapped up with the gorilla and you can do your
In
work.
every group I do this with, there's at least one person who says, I saw the gorilla and I assumed you were trying to distract us, so I ignored it. And that's common too. That's common too. But having said that, again, a group of 20 people, 6 of you didn't see it at all.
No, absolutely
Kurt.
didn't see it. I mean, absolutely did not see it. I mean, that gorilla was not there the first time.
Kurt, wait till you see the next one, because I'm going to blow your mind.
Is there also an implication that we see what we want to see? So if we're trying to communicate to people who are looking for the people passing the basketball to the white shirts, we have to put on the white shirt and pass the basketball.
There is an element of people are going to see what they want to see, and if we want to be seen, we need to put ourselves where we'll be seen.
Right.
There's an element of that as well. But one of the elements here is human beings have a very hard time paying attention. This is going to come back when I say you need to repeat stuff. You can pray if you like.
Yes.
But one of and I say this in the book, one of the biggest things I get from my corporate clients, one of the biggest things I get from my corporate clients is, I've already said that. I've already said that. I've already said that. I've already said that. I told him that. And my reply is, tell them again. Because most of them didn't hear it. And those that did misheard it. Here's a good one. Here's a good one. And this is in the book in chapter 9.
Okay.
When people get a medical diagnosis from their doctor, 50% of what the doctor tells them is forgotten by the time they get home. And of the 50% that is remembered, half of it is remembered wrong.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's why they say, bring someone with you to the doctor.
yeah.
But 50% of what a doctor tells a patient in giving them a diagnosis is forgotten by the time the patient gets home, and the 50% that remains is misremembered. So it's important to write things down, it's important to bring a witness, but human beings just have a hard time paying attention. We could spend an hour on this, but I'm going to suggest we move on, because I want to blow Kurt's mind a little more.
Two
So
girls and Marilyn Monroe. or something. Or, you
So,
know,
so
or
let me
Arnold
skip
Schwarzenegger
this
or-
slide, and you don't even know what this slide is, and so I'll skip that slide, and I'm gonna skip this slide. Okay. This becomes particularly important when we're talking and people are looking at us. When we're talking and people are looking at us, if there's any inconsistency between what we're saying and what people are seeing, what we're seeing drives understanding. We saw that this evening when a bunch of us were having a meeting on something completely unrelated to this talk in that room, and someone came in and saw us gathered around a table with books and said, "Oh, that must be the book signing," and walked right in. That's what happened. The visual interpretation drives behavior. Visual interpretation drives behavior. So now let's look at something called the McGurk effect, which comes to us from a BBC television documentary, but I'm going to ask you to pay particular attention to the gentleman on the screen.
At any one moment, we are being bombarded by sensory information. Our brains do a remarkable job of making sense of it all. It seems easy enough to separate the sounds we hear from the sights we see. But there is one illusion that reveals this isn't always the case.
Okay, so now pay attention to the gentleman.
Have a look at this. What do you hear? But look what happens when we change the picture. And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Kurt, were you hearing
Yes.
fa, fa, fa?
The first time?
No, the second time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you were reading fa, fa, fa. Let me ask the person on Twitter. Did you, not on Twitter, on Skype. Did you hear anything but ba, ba, ba?
Yeah, I had both. I had fa, 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 and ba, ba, ba.
Okay, then you were watching too.
Actually, because I can actually see his mouth.
Okay, okay, I didn't know you could see his mouth. I'm glad you can. Let's dig in a little deeper, Kurt. This is for you. I want to blow your mind.
No, I'm prepared to be blown.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect. Take another look. Concentrate first on the right of the screen. Now to the left of the screen. The illusion occurs because what you see clashes with what you are hearing.
In the illusion, what we see overrides what we hear. So the mouth.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to go back and play this clip from the beginning. Notice that he always does this in threes. Always does it in threes. Ba, 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 and then fa, fa, fa.
Right.
When he says the first fa, close your eyes for the next two. Okay? See if that blows your mind.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect. Take another look. Concentrate first on the right of the screen. Now to the left of the screen. The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
Wow.
In the illusion, what we see overrides what we hear. So the mouth movements we see as we look at a face can actually influence what we believe we're hearing. If we close our eyes, we actually hear the sound as it is.
Right.
If we open our eyes, we actually see how the mouth movements can influence what we're hearing.
Second and third, close
It's a
your eyes.
bizarre effect. Remember, the only sound you're hearing is ba with a B. What's remarkable about this illusion done doesn't seem to make a difference.
Even though we know how it
Even though you know.
doesn't seem to make a difference. No,
The
it
effect works no matter how much you know about the effect. I've been studying the McGurk effect for 25 years now. And I've been facing the stimuli, I've seen stimuli thousands of times, but the effect still works on me. I can't help it. The speech brain just takes in that information and doesn't care about what outside knowledge you bring to bear. Ba, 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 ba.
The McGurk effect shows us that what we hear may not always be the truth. But it also helps us to understand what happens when our senses conflict.
Susie?
When the brain has conflicting information, it tries to make sense of that conflict. And depending on what type of modality is providing more, I guess, salient information, that information might override or at least combine with the other information.
So we can't always trust what we hear, because sometimes our sense of vision takes over, enabling us to maintain a coherent view of the world.
As soon as you close your eyes, all
Yeah.
goes by. Open your eyes open, you hear pop.
Right.
And it doesn't matter when you do it, you control when you open and close your eyes. Same thing happens.
Right.
Susie, you were about to say something, but the sound was on.
Oh, no, there is this wonderful thing on YouTube called bad lip reading. They're very humorous. We usually take political people and pretend to read, they put a voiceover. But you look and you know that's not what they said, but it's just like this. And I was wondering how they did it so well. Well, now
But Kurt, did I succeed in blowing your mind?
Oh, yeah.
And so what are some of the implications of this? Yeah.
Well, I had a question regarding the effect. I found when I closed my eyes, the second iteration was a bit blurred, or there was...
You still had a mental image of what was out there.
Yes, exactly, because my mental image had still remained.
Yeah.
And so it was only by the third iteration that I again heard the ba.
And I used to tell groups, close your eyes for the second one and open it for the third. And what I found is, close your eyes for the second and third. People's minds were blown.
Yeah, then you get your point.
So-
Yeah, good point.
Are meetings held by audio better than by video?
Well, when there's misalignment of the visual and the verbal, the eyes have it. So when there's misalignment. So I had skipped over a slide, but I'll go back to the slide I skipped over. I had a client, a manufacturing company, that gave a presentation to investors on Wall Street. And one of the investors asked a question of the CEO. You know, you've been working on improving your quality, how's that going? And the CEO said, oh, we've undertaken a very significant quality initiative. Jim, our head of manufacturing, is in charge of it. Jim, why don't you brief the group here on how the quality initiative is going? Jim came to the front of the room and said, we've been working very aggressively on our quality initiative. And let me say this, quality continues to improve. And everyone on the stage went, CEO, CFO, head of operations, all went, They thought he had communicated that quality continues to improve. The next day, the stock started to fall. And the investor relations people were puzzled by that because they had only announced good news. So they called the analysts on Wall Street and said, what's going on? They said, oh, we're telling our investors to sell your stock because you haven't gotten your quality problems under control. So what are you talking about? Jim told you that quality improves. I said, no, he didn't. He told us quality hasn't improved. I said, no, he told you that it had improved. No, he didn't. And they fought about what Jim had said. Thankfully, there was a videotape of the meeting. And they sent it to me. And then they asked me to go meet with Jim. And I put the tape into the machine. This is back when there were machines and tapes. And I said, Jim, tell me what this means. And he watched it and he said, it means quality is improving. I said, no, Jim, what does this mean? It means quality is improving. He's an American. He thinks that if you raise your voice, you're understanding. Quality is improving. I said, no, that's not what it means. I said, Jim, what do you mean by quality? He said, you know, quality, the number of defects per 1,000 units of production.
Right.
Ah. So Jim was burdened by two things. First, by the curse of knowledge. When you know something so well, you can't imagine that others don't know. When a manufacturing engineer says quality, he means defects are being reduced. So there's fewer warranty repairs, there's fewer returns, there's fewer things taken off the line because they don't meet standards. Quality's improving. If you're a quality engineer, you want this. But if you're talking to regular folk, this is what you want to say. So the answer to the question is when there's misalignment between the verbal and the visual. There are particular challenges with conference calls, and that's because conference calls are instances where every single person you're talking to is multitasking. And that means they're only kind of sort of occasionally paying attention, which places a much higher premium on repetition, and a much higher premium on signaling, and a much higher premium on never using pronouns, because those are guaranteed to cause misunderstanding. Yeah, Gabrielle.
Since I live with this every day when I'm in the States. Actually, gestures or even sounds are, are culturally, signify really different things. We hear even differently, so that's another complication.
That's exactly right.
Concept.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And this is a very interesting thing of synchronicity.
Yeah.
Because I just said in Turkish Isa, but this is all bound to English, a lot of this, and then Gabriela said it and we hadn't communicated it all.
Right. So let's move on in the sake of time, much more on all of this in chapter 9.
You said three things. You said repetition, signaling, and...
avoiding pronouns. I noticed, Kurt, that there were 3 things.
Yes.
So now on to the third thing that I wanted to share with you today, and that is how we manage meaning. And let me begin by saying, and this always annoys my pharmaceutical clients, and my lawyer clients, and my banker clients, and all of my quantitatively trained clients, it also tends to annoy Unitarian Universalists. And that is the myth of objectivism, suggesting that facts are persuasive. Facts are persuasive. Just tell the facts, they'll get it. Just put it out there, they'll get it. And they don't. They don't. So one of the things we need to recognize is that frames determine the meaning of the facts. And that if we don't frame, those we're speaking to either don't hear the facts or provide their own frames and come up with a different understanding of the facts. And one of the questions I always get when I talk about framing is, but isn't authenticity important? And I get this a lot from my doctor clients and my scientist clients. And I'll say, okay, let's take this example. When a patient takes this drug, 13% of them get this side effect. Is that good? Or is that bad? Because
It might be better if you said 87% didn't get this.
But the scientist says, well, that's a fact. Let's just help. 13% get the side effect. Now let me ask, is there a difference between only 13% get the side effect? As many as 13%, fully 13%. Ibrahim?
I think they impact us all
Yeah.
differently in the way they're framed.
Right. How about even though 13% get the side effect, the benefit they get dramatically overrules the effect. So it isn't the fact. It is the stuff around the fact that causes people to interpret a certain way. So what I tell the scientists is, if you think that 13% is a good thing, and you say simply 13%, and they conclude it's a bad thing, then you haven't been authentic. You have actually allowed people to reach a false conclusion. And that, from an ethical standpoint, isn't a particularly good thing. That's why I handle it. Well, let me unbundle this. Let me now share some science. And this is something that happened across the bay. I usually talk about George Lakoff when I talk about framing. And people who are in the course had a lot of Lakoff, and I still use a lot of Lakoff in the book. There's a lot of Lakoff. There's a whole chapter on that. Chapter 8. But I'm going to do something else, not Lakoff. I'm going to talk about folks at Stanford. And that's Laura Boroditsky and Paul Thibodeau, who are psychologists at Stanford, and they did a multi-year study of the effect of framing on facts. And they took a very large population, I think the population of Stanford undergraduates in psychology courses, but they took this very large population and split them in two. And they gave the same facts at the same time in a narrative to both groups. But they changed the frame in each group. And then they asked, the group, what do you think they should do, people should do? So they wanted to understand whether the people who were in the study reached different conclusions off the same facts based on the frames that were presented. And because they wanted something that everybody knew something about, they decided to do crime as the way into it. So there was a discussion of crime as it exists in a fictional city called Addison. So they told the subjects of the research, there's a city called Addison, and then they described the crime problem. And to half the group, they described the crime problem as a wild beast preying on the city. And to the other group, they described the crime problem as a virus infecting the city. So, for the group that had crime described as a wild beast, they said crime is a wild beast preying on the city of Addison. They said the crime rate in this once peaceful city has steadily increased over the past 3 years. In fact, these days it seems that crime is lurking in every neighborhood. And then they gave the facts. In 2004, the 46,177 crimes were reported compared to more than 55,000 reported in 2007. The rise in violent crime is particularly alarming. In 2004, there were 330 murders. In 2007, there were over 500. They then asked the group, in your opinion, what does the city of Addison need to do to reduce crime? What do you think the answer is? Kill the beast. I saw that movie. Kill the beast! Kill the beast. And what does that mean in contemporary society?
Jail African-American men.
Throw people in jail, round up the usual suspects, and throw them in jail. Okay. Here's what they said. Catch the criminals. Put them in jail. Pass tougher laws with mandatory minimums. In other words, the policy prescription from this frame was build jails, build prisons. The other half got this frame. They said, crime is a virus infecting the city of Addison. The crime rate in this once peaceful city has steadily increased over the past 3 years. In fact, these days it seems that crime is plaguing every neighborhood. And then the facts. In 2004, 46,177 crimes were reported, compared to more than 55,000 reported in 2007. The rise in violent crime is particularly alarming. In 2004, there were 330 murders in the city. In 2007, there were over 500. Identical facts. In your opinion, what does the city of Addison need to do to reduce crime? What should they do?
Cure the virus.
How?
Well, that's like a drug treatment solution.
So how do they do that?
More treatment centers for people who are addicted. Or
So how do you
Jobs.
create jobs?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Better lights.
Better lights?
Better
Okay. Well, here's what they said. Here's what the subject said the city of Addison should do. My battery's dying. They said, investigate root causes. Find out what's causing the spread of the virus. And that's a metaphor. So what that means is there's probably some kind of social dislocation that is causing this virus to spread. So we need to enact social reforms to prevent the further spread of the virus. Well, what kinds of social reforms do you need to enact? Well, it's probably due to poverty, so we need programs to eradicate poverty. Well, how do you eradicate poverty? Well, the key to that is to improve education. Therefore, solution, build schools. Solution, build schools. Two dramatically different policy outcomes of the same set of facts. The only thing changed is the frame that introduced the fact. Here's my favorite part. They asked why. Why did you recommend that? And when the solution was build jails because crime had been described as a wild beast, why build jails? The answer they gave was because of the crime statistics. Weren't you paying attention? When crime was described as a virus and the solution was to build schools, why that solution? Because of the crime statistics. Weren't you paying attention? All right, let's not say a smile. What's behind that smile?
The synchronicity.
Yeah. This is the part that really intrigued me. And the conclusion here, among other things, is we make choices based on emotion. We justify those choices by appealing to facts. And we're not conscious that that's what we're doing. That human beings make choices based on emotion, they justify those choices by appealing to facts, and they're not conscious that that's what they're up to.
Right, I just want to say, we don't need people to frame things necessarily. We already